So much of the conversation about education and outcomes is focused on K through 12, but a low-income, high-performing kid of color who graduates from high school has still a very low percentage chance of graduating from college. So I'd ask the Secretary, are there lessons learned from this report about ways in which we can begin to make improvements in the post-secondary education system so that it mirrors the improvements that and innovations that we're contemplating and beginning to make in K through 12?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Michael, for your extraordinary leadership and courage in this area. So if you look across the country, not at entrance rates or applicants, but at attainment, at graduation rates, you find that universities are not too dissimilar to high schools. That you have some universities that do an extraordinary job of building a culture around completion, and you have others that do a great job of taking students in the front end and do a horrendous job of graduating them in the back end. I will tell you that we tracked this data very closely when I ran the Chicago Public Schools and started to find local universities with students with very similar GPAs and very similar SAT or ACT scores, wildly divergent outcomes, and we started to very actively and publicly steer students towards certain universities and away from others. So what we need to do is a couple things. We need to do a better job of shining a spotlight on those places that are doing it well. One thing we wanted to do that didn't happen, we have to find a way to come back at this, is do a race-to-the-top type competition for institutions of higher education and really put resources behind places that want to build a culture around completion. But this idea that students' starting point, their demographics, their socioeconomic status is destiny couldn't be more wrong on the K-12 side and couldn't be more wrong on the higher education side. And I think we need to do a much better job of rewarding the good actors and calling out those that aren't doing nearly enough to build a culture, not just around access, but around completion.
Actually, I have a feeling this area that you just raised will become one of the big debates in global education policy over the next few years. The OECD is beginning to look at adult competencies and how to compare them. And when those data start coming out in the middle of this current decade, we will see that the whole effectiveness of university systems becoming a major issue of public policy. At the moment, that's still, the universities are often competing on a global stage, but university systems are often totally focused on their own system and not looking outside enough. Colleague there.
Thanks. Amanda Ripley from Time Magazine. I had two quick questions, one for Randy. To me, one of the really interesting findings of this report is that you have to treat different schools differently, which is hard to do. But maybe I misunderstood, but are you saying that you disagree with the finding that accountability measures need to precede autonomy measures in schools that are really struggling? And my second question is for Deborah, and I just wondered, do you feel like, what are some of the barriers from your perspective to treating different schools differently based on their performance? Because I would imagine that's tricky to execute from a statewide point of view.
I don't actually think that it's necessarily tricky to set up a structure in which schools are treated differently based on their performance. In fact, I think there are many systems who have done that. I mentioned Prince George's County as an example, and there are others where based on the performance of a school, they earn different levels of autonomy and are freed up from expectations or requirements that other schools have. So I think that's certainly a possibility. The dilemma that I have is whether or not, it's pretty clear in reading the report that there is a phasing that has to go on, and it makes sense when you think about it, because if you as Mona said just a minute ago, if you just throw a bunch of people in a room and say, collaborate, and they don't have the ability to not only collaborate because it's not something that they have experience doing, but also perhaps not the technical instructional skills to be able to do things like plan together for instruction or use data or look at data and so forth. I think you're putting some pretty big expectations on them. And then to be quite frank, and this might be something that Randy can respond to as well, there's also this dilemma of being in a system in which, as I do, you want to give more autonomy. You want to have environments in which educators are excited about what they're doing, they're working together, they're learning together, they're respected as professionals. But the situation that you're in is one in which you say, let's have common planning time or look at data, and and the thing that comes back is, well, that's going to cost you this much money, or we're going to file a grievance because that's not in our contract, or, you know, so you get, how do you get past that, those existing structures and move to what the design is when you get to the great looking systems, which is what I want and what I think my district leaders want. And I know it's what teachers want because I hear it from them all the time, especially our best ones.